If you are looking for what is in reality more real than reality itself, look into the cinematic fiction.
¿Qué onda, loquitos? Have you ever noticed that we speak in cutesy alliteration? Like illegal immigration, sewer socialism, paranormal preacher. We make rhetorically effective arguments with no substance, no alternative, and some anti-realist belief system. Here's where our discussion of exploitation films comes in. Exploitation films make me think of Twitch streamers.
Turn off the computer, ninja, all right? It's cyberbullying. Turn it off, walk the fuck away, go outside, eat some fucking grass, okay?
Let's take someone for example like Vosh, who's a leftist streamer who speaks on socialism. But to be honest, it's more like spark notes of socialism.
Feels good.
And the problem with that is that when something becomes so digestible to the point of being a candy bar, it's no longer nutritionally valuable for you. It really does more harm than good to be eating Snickers every day. Watching these streamers, you can get stuck in this bubble.
Do you need a second?
I think he's good to go.
And to be honest, all these deep dives got me feeling real homesick. I mean, I touch grass every now and then, but I think it's time to go home.
¿Qué onda, locos? 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 Oye, ¿qué onda, locos? ¿Qué onda, locos?
Is a man not entitled to the sweat of his brow?
You may try to counter everything I just said by saying that if I didn't like it,
Next up is the nostalgic brony.
Damn.
The most famous reactionist of them all.
Reactionists.
But not really.
You believe this shit? You believe this shit? You believe this shit?
Alright, loquitos. So before I begin, I kind of want to give a shout out to a person who created this shirt for me. There's Zenny Fox Designs. I was looking for a shirt that had like a little mole on it, reading Don Quixote on it. I think moles are pretty central to what I'm always speaking about, especially on the basis of wanting to be ordinary. Like that current show that's on Netflix named My Name. And the movie Himizu, the whole concept of a collectivist culture is really to want to be like everybody else. So, and I know it's a bit strange and random, but I actually think it highlights a lot of the collectivist principles that we talk about and just a lot of the stuff that we are going to go over in this episode as well. Lately, I've been thinking about what does it mean to be wholesome or authentic honest, or even just ordinary. Today we're going to talk about Ataque de los Pájaros. But before we do, I kind of want to tell you a story. So I spent the first 8 years of my life living 1 block away from the train tracks. And I used to sleepwalk at least twice a week. My family say that they once found me just right across the train tracks, standing next to the train. My great-grandfather actually built a triad of houses to have the 3 daughters live next to each other, which they ended up doing. One of them was built in 1920, another one in 1899, and another in 1910. So I stayed with my grandmother for most of my life. And in some of the video in the intro, you get to see her old house. And we didn't get to go inside of it, but just know that the only large thing was the backyard. I think when I went to look into it on Zillow, it was actually just 500 square feet with about 5 of us living there. Yeah, 500 square feet for 5. It was pretty interesting. It was nice. But then I lived in Section 8 with my dad, and we spent a long time jumping from house to house and school to school and pretty much walking everywhere. I think that's where I got the prototypical grandfather lifestyle. You know, I used to walk 2 miles to school and 2 miles back. And it seems like lifetime is away from having a corporate job and creating and editing YouTube videos. I know this may all seem tedious, but I think it needs to be said. There's meaning in the minutia. We don't always need to take everything so serious all the time. Just like exploitation films. And in this instance, Birds of Prey, it doesn't take itself at all serious. So, if there's anything you take away from this, just try not to take anything too serious on the internet especially. So let's delve into our next discussion about another of Rene Cardona's famous exploitation films.
El ataque de los pájaros.
Beaks the movie or Birds of Prey. You can find Ataque de los Pájaros on YouTube, and you can find Beaks the movie on Tubi. Essentially, they are the same thing. Beaks is on Tubi, but it is missing like the first 10 minutes. Beaks, I feel, was written for more of a grindhouse audience, since it begins with people literally slamming, shooting, and killing birds. Pigeons, to be exact. I saw that one first, and it was lacking the part in Cusco and Machu Picchu, as well as the other part with the people on the airplane discussing extraterrestrials and starmen.
Extraterrestres. Puede ser.
Which was actually my favorite part. Let's begin with the concept of trash cinema. Now, if the creator from The Twilight Zone, Rod Serling, ever saw the shit that is on cable, he might just become a nihilist.
This, I think, stems from the fact that the networks have forever thought of an audience as some kind of mongoloid personages with IQs and negative figures who cannot retain any kind of close association unless they are thrust into the maelstrom of familiar names week after week after week. It simply doesn't sustain legitimate drama when you write about one guy week after week.
Perhaps, there's nothing original anymore. But then again, this may be a bias of mine. I respect Twilight Zone more than any other show. Episodes like that one that's exactly like that Disney movie. Just like they say Final Destination being based on the 2 Twilight Zone episodes, 22 and The Hitchhiker. Maybe I just wonder how far inspiration really stretches.
Like, what is that, dude? It's no fucking secret. I bought a house, it was $8,000.
Yeah, wait, this person is making fun of me.
Like, what makes Beaks so much more different than Birdemic as a criticism? Or what makes Twilight Zone different than Alfred Hitchcock Presents? Or any different than reading Edgar Allan Poe? Exploitation films can really range, from frustrating to fun.
Tells me this could be my lucky night.
A good example of plain Jane bad exploitation movie is like Rob Zombie's Halloween. Definitely sleepy stuffs. Whereas Beaks can be a fun watch. Besides the rude nature to the pigeons, of course. Okay, let's get on with it. Beaks the movie is a movie about the birds. Deadly, random, pissed off birds. The movie is directed by the Mexican king of exploitation films, Rene Cardona Jr. He begins the movie in a fucking trash site. Then this hunter shoots some pigeons and some other guy slams them to the ground, and then a man shoots the pigeon with a blindfold on. At this rate, you can clearly see why the pigeons would want to kill everybody. The movie consists of 2 main characters, Vanessa, who is a TV reporter, and Peter, her cameraman boyfriend.
Lo siento, amigo. Tal vez la próxima vez, eh?
Vanessa is the actress Michelle Johnson, which was Kim from The Love Boat. And Peter is Christopher Adkins, best known for his role as the brother in Blue Lagoon. Also some side characters whose main purpose is to get killed and attacked by birdos. From a technical perspective, directing is pretty simple and a bit fun, like when the man in the plane gets attacked by the birds. But there are moments in the movie where the directing gets a bit boring and a bit strange, like when the camera work shifts from Peter's recording and sometimes to switching to being just a third person. The camera work is definitely strange. I don't have any idea how they made this distinction. I also don't have any idea how they got the pigeons to get on people.
When swarms of pigeons are thrown at our actors.
Which makes sense because sometimes they look like they're tossed.
Oh my god, they're just throwing birds on them!
I also feel like the edits stop and start the movie so much it feels entirely disconnected.
España, Italia, San Juan.
Beaks definitely drags on, but I really do believe the repetitive music is what makes it unbearable. The music is horrid. It's ear-piercing to the point of soothing you to sleep, like holding a string chord for minutes straight. In this movie, I think there's something interesting about media and collective insanity. No, not like politically. In my perspective, at least.
Why, you're getting nervous, man.
For example, I'm sure there will never be another moment in time where the theory of ancient astronauts will be perpetuated ad infinitum, like we got during the time of ancient alien days. Just copy and paste Chariot of the Gods over and over and over. And conspiracy theory of the late 90s and early 2000s. I've studied a lot of this magical nonsense and love it. From ley lines to the New World Order to David Icke's reptilian theory.
This vibrational compatibility means that these reptilian entities who operate just outside of human sight, or at least can project themselves in a way that we can't decode them.
To geomancy even. This was all before Alex Jones, of course.
Come on over here. Come on over here. Now you flip me off. Come on, coward. No. Come on. You're not an intellectual. You're a fake and a fraud.
Birds can honestly be pretty terrifying when we really think about it. The movie Beaks is slowed down so much, I think if we were to speed it all up, I think the movie would be about 10 minutes. After the birds attack for about 50 minutes, the movie then follows the prototypical flow chart of exploitation films, which is to show women in bikinis and rich dude in robe as the boss. Vanessa tries to warn him about the shit going on, and he refuses to take it serious. Vanessa decides to get the whole town into a train, which is said to be the representation of modernism. I don't know about that. And then the birds attack the train. Throughout the film, there is said to be a lot of symbolism, but if I'm truly honest, I just don't see it. I just see a decent exploitation film, at least the long version is. The version known as Beaks on Tubi is missing the portion in Peru, which I feel is central to the jokish nature of the movie. This is where I will be honest and say I don't take anything
we get up to no good being goblins
too seriously.
They started without us?
That's it!
Stop!
Ian, where are you?
Chapter 2. Relative Freedom and the Not-So-Serious War Machine. Absolutely or relatively? Like with absolute or relative poverty, or with absolute and relative freedom. We tend to blur the lines in America. We have that leeway. In the movie Beaks, we see the birds attack the humans, but only insofar that the humans attack the birds first, by shooting them, smashing them to the ground, flying in their face literally, caging them up and breeding them up for consumption. Is relative freedom good enough, the pigeons probably ask? Are we really free to choose? If so many of us were on food stamps, did we have the choice of good food if parents chose for us bad food? This is central to the political thesis of freedom. Freedom is also to make choices that can hurt. Some strong advocates of veganism, like perspective philosophy, would say that we should all stop eating meat, and that would do the most good. But the constant resilient statement is that of Vosh.
There is positive utility, because as much as this sounds like a cop-out, eating a steak does contribute positive utility to the world because it's tasty. That is a real thing.
So, this could be one explanation as to why the birds attack. Or maybe they were trying to go for human depopulation, much like Henry Kissinger's 1974 Food and Drug Act. Back in the movie, after the whole town is in the train, the birds break in and attack everyone. But people escape into another car, and some Che Guevara-looking guy throws a fucking grenade and explodes the car with the birds in it. Then the battle with the birds takes a break. The movie ends with everyone who was hiding ending up being safe. And Vanessa on TV saying that perhaps the birds stopped because they didn't think they could be the most cruel killer of all. Man. To beat you over the head again with the message of masochism. I joke, but it is a bit too ham-fisted for me. I believe in the message subtlety as the king in these instances.
Great cinematographers really enable us to think in visual terms.
That's just my opinion. Beaks ends almost abruptly with some shots of a body of water and then blackout. But Ataque, the long version, ends with the prophecy of Joel, which is even funnier. After reading on the nomadic war machine and the possibility of the birds representing the attack on modernism, I couldn't convince myself that that's a good message with this movie. Truth be told, I believe Rene Cardona was just having fun at the expense of Alfred Hitchcock, which would explain his other film like Cyclone. As far as lines of flight goes or deterritorialization, different rhizomes, I couldn't see the connection here either. Perhaps I believe in fun, and that's what this film is. A minor inconvenience and a little bit of fun. It even won Best of the Worst in Red Letter Media.
Beaks was Best of the Worst. It only seems appropriate to destroy Python 2.
And the reason this video is dedicated to authenticity is derived in the fact that we know one does not look like the other. You can't honestly say to me, watching an IHE video and watching a React channel is the same thing. There's something offered in one instance, which is why I think Beaks is so bad.
I'm a journalist, not a sideshow barker.
And Ataque is decent. Ataque is trying to give a reason as to why the birds the movie happened. But Beaks has nothing to offer except its gore and bad editing. Criticism takes time, passion, a little insanity, and care for your product. When someone streams a live reaction, whether educated or not, they do not offer the same thing as the other. I'm not saying you need to take your criticism so serious, but you do need to do good where you can do good, and ridicule where you can ridicule. And nobody can say right things 100% of the time. That's why YouTubers edit.
Plagiarism is an act of fraud. It involves both stealing someone else's work and lying about it afterward. But can words and ideas really be stolen? According to US law, the answer is yes.
To end this off, I have to say, an interesting parasocial friend of the 90s spoke out a few weeks ago. Maybe it's a few months ago now. Steve from Blue's Clues came out and spoke to a bunch of millennials. And it's interesting to see the people's reactions. They were crying for no apparent reason. Almost like there was a total removal of the veil between reality and TV. And they believed that Steve was their friend. The exploitation of human loneliness, I think, really exemplifies the fact that there's so much exploitation films out there, so much exploitation media out there, that we no longer call it by its name. We no longer call it exploitation. We just call it media. I'm not trying to make fun of this, but I am saying that perhaps the parasociality element of Blue's Clues interacting, pseudo-interacting in that case, with his audience has derived this sort of attachment disorder. And maybe it's like a parasocial attachment disorder. And I'll tell you the truth, this movie is absolutely terrible, but relatively good. I suppose if I compare it to eating garbage. Now, Rene Cardona did a whatever job. And sometimes, very rarely, the movie is so bad it's good. I guess I just feel bad for the pigeons too. From my understanding and research, and from an uncle I had nicknamed TP, chicken slaughterhouses were legit the worst place to work possible. He worked for years, and when he came back, he was not the same. He was all messed up in the brain. And anytime you offered him chicken, he would get fucking pissed. I think if you have the option and money to do good, then you should be doing good. To conclude, Fun is often downplayed as a cartoonish childish wish, or longing as an adult. But to play really is the central nature of fun. Create something ordinary. It doesn't need to be extraordinary. Our greatest role and goal in analyzing and perceiving is to create concepts that are consistent. Since there is no external as there is in science, creating consistency is the goal of philosophy. We don't need to be right all the time. We just need to be consistent.
Witness a certain seductive scene. Then you are shown that it's just a fake, stage machinery behind, but you are still fascinated by it. Illusion persists. There is something real in the illusion, more real than in the reality behind it.